Continuing with section 11.9, we are now looking at functions which we are going to express as power series. We started with the basic simple example of a function which is 1 over 1 minus x, and we noted that this is actually the sum of a geometric series which has the first term as 1 and the r, the common ratio, is x. So what is that thing? That is, so if I first cross this and write the series, x to the n goes from 0 to infinity, which can be expanded as 1 plus x plus x square plus x cube and plus dot dot dot, so on. So it keeps on going like this. So if you notice, every term is obtained by multiplying the previous term by x. So which means r here is x and a here is 1. Now this series is a geometric series, and that's why we are getting a and r. A is the first term, r is the common ratio. So this series is called is a geometric series. Geometric, and it converges when the absolute value of r is less than 1. So in this case, in our case, we have this series when it is converging, we can actually write the sum as 1 over 1 minus x. So now we are looking at a function. We can now think of this as a function, and this is its series representation. So now we are doing in our examples. So in example 2, for example, so we have 1 over 1 plus x square. So the way we think about this problem is, can I write it in this form? Basically, we are trying to see if we can write this in as a over 1 minus r. What is a? A is the first term and r is the difference, the ratio, common ratio. So I rewrote this here. So 1 over 1 plus x square. So I wrote it as 1 over 1 minus negative x square. So this is our r now, negative x square, and a is 1 because we have 1 over here. So now we can do this expansion in two ways. One is, which I showed here, what I did, so in how we get it is in our basic geometric series. I'll call it the basic. So the basic geometric series, if we replace the x in there by negative x square, then our we get the series representation for 1 over 1 plus x square. So I did here, I said, okay, the 1 over 1 plus x square is going to be equal to the summation. So x is being replaced by negative x square raised to the power n, so which can be then splitted as negative 1 raised to n times x to the 2n. And now expanding this term by term, we get the expansion that is given here. We can now do it the other way in which I did the first problem. So the other way, we can start with, okay, we have a is equal to 1 and r is equal to minus x squared. So it means in our expansion of the basic series, so you look at me how I do it. So I will say 1 plus 1 over 1 plus x square equals 1 plus, now in place of x I will put negative x square, so that we have 1 minus x square plus negative x whole to the 1, 2. So now we have negative 1 or negative x square whole to the square, third term of the, so which will make the power 2 will annihilate or eliminate the negative sign, and we have x square square. So we get x to the fourth plus, but we know now we are going to get negative x square whole to the third. So when you raise negative 1 to the third power, you get a negative sign, so we get negative, and the power on x comes. So what happens with the powers here? They get multiplied. So we get x to the 6. So now you see the pattern. The next one will be plus x to the 8. And the next one will be minus x to the 10. And so on. So plus dot dot dot. And now we can think about writing this in the closed form, or summation. N is equal to 0 to infinity negative 1 raised to the power of n times x to the 2n. Okay. So whichever way is easier for you, you can do that. Okay, let's look at the next example. That is 4x square over 2x plus 3. Now 4x square, we can put it aside and look at the series 1 over the function 1 over 2x plus 3. So if I have 1 over 2x plus 3, what I will do, I will write it in the form 1 over 1 minus r. A over 1 minus r, or 1 over 1 minus r. So I start with 1 over 2x plus 3. I can write it as 1 over 3 plus 2x so now we will divide top and bottom by 3 or we can say I will factor out 3 from the bottom. The reason is I need a 1 in this place. So dividing by 3, I get 1 over 3 divided by, so 3 over 3, which is 1, plus 2 over 3x. 2 over 3x. Or this will be equal to 1 over 3, I take it out in the front. So I have 1 over 1 minus negative 2 over 3x. So you see now in this one, A is 1, R is negative 2 over 3x. So now I will replace the x in our basic series by negative 2 over 3. So let me write the basic. So that the 1 over 1 minus negative 2 over 3x will be equal to 1 minus 2 over 3x plus 4 over 9 x squared minus we have now cubed, so 8 over 27 x cubed plus dot dot dot. Now the next thing we have to do it to now just multiply it by 1/3, and then we can take care of that 4x squared that was left out. So you multiply this whole thing by 1 over 3, and we put the 1 over 3 there. So let's try to write it in the summation form. So 1 over 3 summation and goes from 0 to infinity. Negative 1 raised to the power n. Or you can just say negative 2 over 3x. Then but it's better to have the negative sign separate. And maybe the power also split. At this step, we will have the power split, and then when everything we incorporate, then we can combine terms. So negative 1 raised to n, 2 to the n, x to the n, divided by 3 to the n. And this 1 over 3, remember there is a 1 over 3 outside here. Now the last thing, we have to incorporate the 4x square. So the 4x squared, now I can write that 4x squared divided by 2x plus 3 equals 4x squared into this quantity, the one that we found. So is equal to 4x squared over 3 . So now 4x squared over 3 doesn't depend on our n, so we can take it inside the summation. Notice that 4 is 2 squared, so we will get an expression like term 2 and 2 to the n times 2 to the 2. How does that simplify? The bases are same and these are multiplying, so we get 2 raised to n plus 2. Powers get added, so that this becomes equal to summation n is going from 0 to infinity, negative 1 raised to n raised to n plus 2, and x also raised to n plus 2. Divided by 3 raised to n, but then there is an extra 3 outside, so 3 raised to n plus 1. So this is the power series for 4x squared over 2x plus 3. Now if you want, we can put these two together. We can write it n equals 0 to infinity, negative 1 raised to n, two x raised to x plus n plus 2, whole divided by 3 raised to n plus 1. Okay, last one. F of x is equal to 1 over 5 minus x. So I have to convert it into that typical form. So I will write it as, then we can divide by 5, top and bottom like we did with that 3. We have 1 over 5 divided by 1 minus x over 5. So this is 1 over 5 we take in front, and now we are left with 1 on the top and 1 minus x over 5 at the bottom. You notice here r is x over 5. So to find the series expansion, power series expansion for the f of x is equal to 1 over 5 minus x, we just replace the x in the our basic series by x over 5. So we end up getting 1 over 5 minus x equals 1 plus x over 5 plus x square over 25 plus x cube over 125 plus dot 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 is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to infinity, and inside we have x over 5 whole raised to n. That is the series expression. So now in this examples I only found the series, but we have to check their interval of convergence or the domain of the function. So how do we do that? So let's go backwards. Start with this last one. So convergence, or say converges when remember absolute value of r is less than 1. So in our case we have when absolute value of x over 5 is less than 1, or I can say absolute value of x is less than 5. So 5 gets multiplied, and or you can say negative 5 is less than x is less than 5. So converges on this interval. So this is the domain. The previous problem, what was our R? R is this quantity. So our domain will be when negative 2 over 3x, well, negative goes away because we are taking the absolute value. So 2 over 3x is less than 1. What does that mean? It means 3 over 2 x is less than 3 over 2. Multiply by the reciprocal. The absolute sign stays with the x. And this gives you negative 3 over 2 is less than x is less than 3 over 2. So that will be the interval of convergence or the domain, whatever. So the domain is and the rest you can figure out. So I'll take a rest and then something else, one more video.